Welcome to the Fed to Fed Podcast's MHS Digital Front Door series. In this special collaboration with the Leidos Partnership for Defense Health, we explore what it takes to drive digital transformation in government healthcare. Through candid interviews and virtual panel discussions, we're driving thought leadership on tech innovation and government healthcare. We are so happy to have you tuning in.
Hello, my name is Mary Womack. I am the MHS Health Strategy Director for the DIMSUM program. I'm working very closely with the program teams as well as our partners that we all have together today on the digital modernization effort, specifically called Digital First or Digital Front Door, which is obviously going to become Digital Front Door Plus as we continue to scale and modernize. With us today, we have Mr. Chris Nichols. He is the PM for the Enterprise Intelligence and Data Solutions, formerly known as EADS, driving what I consider one of the most critical parts of this entire endeavor is the underlying data architecture and data strategy that is necessary to truly deliver these tools in an appropriate way. Next, we have Mr. Kenyon Crowley. He is a managing director of AI and data in health with the Accenture Federal Services team. And last but not least, we have Mr. Steve Mullins, who is our Director of Analytics and leads the data and analytics teams from a DIMSUM program. Thank you for joining us today, and I will take a quick moment to let you guys add on a little bit of extra color to our introductions. Chris, would you like to go first?
Chris Nichols, Program Manager for EIDS, Enterprise Intelligence Data Solutions. Acquisition guy, healthcare guy, Army nurse long ago, kind of bringing all that together to help shape and drive where data is going within the military health space.
Thank you, Chris. Over to you, Kenyon.
Thanks, Mary. Hi, Kenyon Crowley. Delighted to be with you. I'm a health information scientist by background at Accenture Federal. I help build data and AI systems that support responsible AI and help drive the federal health mission. Also faculty at University of Maryland, where I teach health information system and AI for executives. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Kenyon. And last but not least, Mr. Mullins.
Hey, thanks, Mary. Thanks for having me. I'm Steve Mullins, Director of Analytics, as Mary said, on the DIMSUM program. I've grown up in the DHA basically, and look forward to this conversation about data strategy and data and predictive analytics.
All right, with no further ado, let's jump right in. The hope is that this is conversational, so don't be afraid to jump in. If you hear someone else commenting on something, you want to pull the thread on just a little bit. But Chris, we'll start with you. Can you kind of speak in broad brush strokes about the MHS care mission and needs today as well as going forward?
Military healthcare is in a state of transition. It really has been for a while. I think everyone has to remember that it wasn't too many years ago that each service really ran their health operations separately. The legacy TMA oversaw really more the TRICARE plan capabilities, but really each service ran. And so, General Place, the previous director of DHA, really his mission was to integrate based on congressional NDAA language to integrate into one system. And so now General Crosland has fully integrated all of that capabilities together. The services are focused on the readiness missions, but because of that, they are in a new state of play on how do they transition and how do they manage one of the largest healthcare organizations in the world, right? And so not in a disparate manner, but in a consistent manner as they now are building out the networks and how they will manage these things. And so because of that, there's the business of healthcare that has really changed, but it's really also then focused on how do they manage the health of the organization and the health of the individuals within the 9.4 million beneficiaries that they provide care to. And a big piece of that is technology and really driving how we can put the right tools in the hands of the individuals being each individual in that 9.4 million beneficiaries, right? The active duty population, retirees, the beneficiaries, and the dependent population. And so how do we put the right tools in their hands to have much more effective and efficient care at a much lower cost?
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. Steve, from a programmatic perspective, I know that you've been kind of seeing this transition. You've been in the midst of it. Do you want to kind of speak a little bit briefly about some of the challenges and opportunities that you see from a program perspective of how we tie into this broader mission?
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Mary. So absolutely, from the program perspective, I feel it. And I know Chris feels it every day. The complexities of integrating the data and having data sources from multiple agencies. We've got on the DIMSUM program, we have DoD data, obviously, but we have the VA's data, Coast Guard data, NOAA data, and whatever other agencies are going to join the CHR platform. And the governance around that, the data that's being shared and the governance of the analytics that are being built around that data and integrating with the other data sources across the, Chris's MIP platform, but then also on the VA side, their analytics platform and data consolidation point. So I think that is a lot of the complexity. It's difficult to do within one agency, let alone across multiple government agencies.
Yeah, I like that you talk about the complexity of that. And I know that the two of you are in that pretty heavily on a day-to-day basis. Kenyon, thinking about that complexity and thinking about what types of opportunities there are for analytics as we start building this infrastructure, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a great time to build out analytics, and such tremendous work has been done to set the foundation for data analytics. And now that data is accessible, and now we need to figure out the right ways to make it usable for the different populations, so that not only is the data available, but the type of insights that can drive health outcomes for providers and clinicians are accessible, that also are being translated in a way that can be easily consumed by individuals to help them better manage their care. And I think too, as we look to a more predictive future, there's so many things that may impact operational readiness, whether it's on the clinical side or the dental side and other factors. Being able to have a unified view of that and being able to support operational readiness with these new capabilities is especially exciting as well.
I like what you had to say when it talks about the immense amount of data that we have. And just to pull a thread on that a little bit, Chris, what are your thoughts now that you have this massive amount of data? How do we truly leverage that data appropriately in the right space at the right time?
Within the MHS information platform, we have about 4.5 petabytes of data at this point in time. I always kind of say, everyone's like, that's awesome. And I'm saying that's not a good thing, right? Because of that, we have a lot of duplicative data, right? When we started the MIP 6 years ago, since over the last 6 years, we've crashed 24 warehouses together. We've replatformed over 30 applications on top of that because it's utilizing the underlying data. But not what it's about, right? What it's about is taking that data into information and as Kenyon was saying, into insights, right? And so part of that is really rebuilding our data back in and structure the right way to support and enable everything that should be what can be done in the future. Have we moved a lot? Yes, we have. Are we there? No. I think some of the critical things that we're doing right now in the data space is really around OMOP, which is Odyssey Working Group, but OMOP, the Common Data Model, is so we can actually get to a point that everyone is using the same data sets for the same purpose. Right now, if you're a business analyst in DHA J8 and you're saying diagnosis, and there might be 7 to 10 different terms that they are qualifying as diagnosis. If you're a healthcare person in medical affairs, they might be using 15 different data points, right? When they say certain things. And so getting that standardized ontology around everything is the critical first piece, and then mapping from there. And so that's one of the big things that we're putting in place. We've been doing a lot of mapping, but really getting OMOP in now. And then we're actually already mapped all the MHS data, MHS GENESIS data to OMOP. We've done the purchase care side, and we have not finished the legacy pieces because of other reasons, but getting that standardized process in place is critical, and then building off of that, and then supporting. I talk a lot about my priorities this year, getting our data right, and then getting our platform right from a structure and infrastructure perspective. And then part of that is also ensuring that we have all the right tools. We don't have a lot of duplicative tools in there. And then really managing across this data ecosystem from the right financial perspective so we can actually resource the work that needs to be done.
Absolutely. And so you kind of led naturally into my next question. We kind of talked about data governance and getting that legacy data aligned with the existing data and getting data from multiple sources utilized and lateralized for the military health system. With that in mind, do you want to talk a little bit about the underlying challenges and healthcare data strategy issues that you see and you're facing at the moment?
I think one of the big things is like I said, inconsistency in the data input. That's not something on the technology side that we can fix. That's something that we have to work with our functional partners to resolve, right? Because if the input's not coming in the right way, then the output, you have deviations of the mean and differences of what the data output is. And so that's more of a human factor piece that we have to work with our functional community to resolve. On the data governance piece, DHA has been working hard to define and bring in a chief data officer, which I would see as my partner, my functional partner. Just like with MHS GENESIS, there's the functional champion. They don't have a single individual that's coordinating, collaborating across the agency and also with health affairs and others on their priorities. And so getting that right, I think is extremely important, and getting a person in that position that becomes our functional translator of what the agency's primary requirements are. That being said, part of our issue is that compared to the EHR, where there is a single functional champion primary customer, my problem right now is I don't have one customer, right? DHA is not my only customer. Health Affairs is. The three service medical organizations, Army, Navy, Air Force are. CDAO at the DoD level, the COCOMs, and all of the combatant and the joint staff, right? And then that's not even including, if you look at DHA, the research community, large research community. And so part of that is in the data governance space is getting these types of things aligned so everyone understands what the priorities are and everyone understands that their priority may not be the priority of the larger organization. And so then we're focusing the right work in the right place. I think the other one would be just the disparities of data. Steve and I, we're dealing with a lot of the bulk data extract, right? But I think that's a good example of where getting things right, it takes time, but it's getting it right. Because originally, back of a napkin between myself and I think it was Monica Ferris Stapleton at the time, we developed BDE as a Band-Aid solution to get data moving that was not in the HL7 packages that we passed between MHS GENESIS and the MIP. But then we had a small amount of tables. Then we expanded to what, Steve, over 1,000, say? And then the functional community said, whoa, that's way too much data. We don't know what to do with this. And that really forced them to really sit back and identify what tables of data, what information they needed on that nightly exposure of that information. Then we think we got it down to about 240, and that's kind of, and then it's slowly growing based upon use cases of the functional community identifying what they need. I think that's a good example of data into information and working with them, working with the functional community to determine this thing. Steve, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, you're right, Chris. We really scaled that back. Right now, as you mentioned, we were at 240 something at some point, and now we're at 374. But that 374 tables that we're syndicating right now, we're all specifically asked for. We're not syndicating data that nobody needs. And that does grow. It continues to grow, and it will continue to grow. I don't think it'll ever get back up to the 1,100 tables that was just an information overflow. But that's where we are today, is at 374, and I knock on wood, I'm in a reasonably good spot with it. But there are a lot of improvements still to make to that bulk data extract process, and as Chris mentioned, we're working on that on a daily basis.
I make my own note of 374 tables because I don't think I realized it was that. But that's a part of it too, is working with Steve and Kenyon and others to really look at the best way to share that data. Is it bulk data extract in the future? I don't believe it is. I think it's probably more of a FHIR API call to get to the information. But those are the things that we're working through. But those are the technology issues. What we can't resolve are really those functional governance pieces more than in an advisory role to help move that work forward.
Yeah, there's definitely some modernization there that we can be doing, and we're looking at that now. As Chris mentioned, right now we're working with something that preceded me on the program to just a bunch of scripts that were developed to extract that data and get it over to the MIP on a I think it was a weekly basis back in the day, and then about a year ago it went to a nightly basis. And but we're still using that same foundation, and just like everything else, we need to set a more modern foundation for that data syndication between MHS GENESIS and the MIP.
So as we kind of move through solving some of these technology issues, Kenyon, I'll start with you on this one. How do we move forward responsibly now that we've captured this data? How do we make sure clinicians can have the data they need when they need it, right? That seamless access.
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think a lot of it harkens back to what Chris was saying about having that common data model and having an infrastructure that can support moving the data into information where it's needed. When we think about sort of the responsibleness of insights generated from that data, I think part of it is having visibility into different performance characteristics of that data. So if we know that data is coming from different sources, and if there's any transformation or other activities that need to be done with the data in that data lifecycle, being able to have visibility into that. So are there differences between different subpopulations within that data? Are certain decisions more performant for others? Do we have visibility if there's, for example, some discrepancy in the types of labels that are being applied across the different data sets? If we're going to use that to train a machine learning algorithm that then a clinician might use to help support an activity for population health or safety and so forth. But within this architecture, I mean, there's those capabilities and the ability to meet responsible AI aims. And indeed, with some of the compliance requirements coming out in federal, it'll be required. And then the other, I think, step with that is with all that data and all these insights, being able to translate in a way that's consumable by humans, right? Because humans and a clinician would have a different view of data than a patient would, and different levels of health literacy and understanding. So as we make that data accessible, either in computable form or through interfaces, being able to provide in a way that people make sense of that, but then also having a human in the loop so that you're getting feedback across that cycle. So you know sort of how humans are accessing the data, how they are acting on that data, and are those decisions leading to a learning health system and increasing the performance of the overall health system.
I agree with you. I want to be very clear, right? But I think what's missing there is that full OODA loop. We're not getting the whole community as a whole to really understand that is a cyclical, right? That is a cyclical process. And the larger health organization putting the right gates in place, as I said before, most of this is not a technology issue. This is a people, process, and policy opportunity that I think we have to help move the organization into understanding. It's not about buying technology, right? This is not about buying a widget. I'm going to put my informaticist hat on for a second, right? If you don't fix the underlying effort, it doesn't matter what you buy and acquire and put in place, because you haven't solved a lot of these are human process things, right? Mm-hmm. To be resolved to really then make this enabled the right way. And the commercial organizations that you've seen successful have addressed it to me in much more in that manner first, and then laying in the technology and the data to support that strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. And I think you said something earlier about the human factors piece, and I think that's central to all this. And I think it's central to understand the different users of the data and the attributes and the skills they have and the needs they have. As we think about these human analytical sort of AI interfaces and teaming going into the future, I mean, it also offers those opportunities where we know in certain aspects of the health system where there's a lot of burden on clinicians or administrative staffs or other just in their management of the data, in being able to use that data to make decisions in the organization, figuring out sort of how we can use that analytics to reduce the burden while enhancing humans' ability to do the thinking and other care activities that they do well, I think is sort of an exciting potential of this movement as well.
Do you have anything to add to that, Steve?
Oh, I do. I'm chomping at the bit. So, I think I love, Chris is talking about laying that, laying the OMOP model over everything. And I think people that are watching this or listening to this, what that does is if you think about the way care was delivered with CHCS or documented in CHCS versus Alta versus Accenture versus now MHS GENESIS, that data model is going to allow people to have all that data normalized together and search it in a single way. And I think by putting that common data model in over top of all of that, it's going to help with what Kenyon was speaking to, is enabling a data culture where people can trust the data and understand the data, and that data literacy can be expanded naturally across the enterprise by the stakeholders that looking at that data. And I think what EADS is doing now is laying the foundation that is going to support that data literacy, the rest of the pillars of any data strategy, right? Data literacy, the governance around that data, how it's shared, who it's shared with, and when, and in what analytics, that certainly that pillar as well. I think this foundation being set is going to enable data being trusted and seen as an asset across DHA. I'm excited about it.
I'm excited. I use the way CHCS, and I'm dating myself, right, by saying this, but I remember being an ER nurse in the William Beaumont ER and putting orders in CHCS, and that was pre-Ulta, right, long before Ulta, and everything else was on paper, right? And the fight was building templates on a piece of paper so you could just check block stuff, right?
Right.
Somebody had to go back and pull all of that manually to do anything with it. And that somebody was me, because I was a lieutenant. And so, I don't know how many man hours I spent back then just taking all the charts for a week period and going through and pulling the data out of it, right? And that's what we got to move away from. But that's still where we are in many ways, is not enabling some of the things that Kenyon was talking about to really leverage the information, leverage the data to drive change. So that's the exciting part.
And that kind of leads us naturally into our next question, which is, given the DHA Director General Crossland's overarching My Military Health vision and this transformation to a value-based care model, how will data analytics help her achieve that goal? And I'll start with you, Chris.
I think we've talked around it. I think the biggest piece is having the information available, because I think the larger My Military Health vision, to include digital first, digital front door, all these different things, is about enabling better healthcare. We can enable the long-term intent in my head is, if you enable better healthcare, you also decrease costs the right way. Because if you're also then enabling better healthcare, you're bringing a large portion of this population back into our MTFs to be treated in our MTFs and not in the community. That also then enables the clinicians to see and have better opportunities for what they are providing. So then that also enables them to be ready when they deploy, because that's a part of the issue too, right? When we send everything downtown, what happens is the clinicians aren't seeing the amount or the right caseload to be ready for deployment. And so then that's also causing a disparity from a readiness of the force perspective. And then from a readiness of the health perspective, bring them back in. You can manage their care better by providing them the right tools to help everyone manage themselves better. And a lot of that is the backbone of data and information and sourcing it the right way. I like to say jokingly that MHS GENESIS is only one of my 130 data sources in the MIP, but part of that, and I jokingly say that, but the fact of the matter is it is. But what that really means is it's connecting all these different data sources together to get to the right capabilities that you need, right? Because it's not one system. It's a lot of them that have to be integrated and tied together. Going back to the OMOP piece, it's also then mapping that data between those different systems, right? To then be able to fully leverage that information. And I think that's really, to me, the biggest piece. That's the enabler when we talk about it. It's not, everyone talks about data is the new oil, et cetera. It's really, data is everything that we're discussing. And then integrating that the right way that then drives that strategy. Kenyon, Steve, anything?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, part of that vision of the digital front door and digital causal end is, access and reducing friction to care wherever it may take place. And I think in providing care anywhere and digitally, that information has to be fair enabled, right? It has to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable through whatever application or through whatever environment in which the clinician or the patient and soldier needs it. So looking ahead to that, how do we do that in a way that makes us be able to understand where a digital delivery may be as effective or maybe even more effective, depending on the specific type of activity or screening or readiness that might be occurred. So then we can look across the health system and then optimize so that we're making the best use of resources. And at the heart of that, to make those decisions is making that information accessible. Steve, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, and I think the identification of the use cases to support, the value-based care are going to come into play. And we've been talking a lot about setting the foundation of the data to be able to support those use cases. So setting that foundation is going to allow, as those use cases come to us, if we don't have a data point that's required to support a specific use case, we can bring it in and immediately map it to the common data model that Chris's team's implementing now. So I think the use cases are going to be more easily implemented because we're going to set this foundation up front.
I think we always talk about the 4 V's of data: this volume, veracity, velocity, and variety. And I think managing and controlling those 4 V's is everything that we're talking about, right? Because it's the variety of data that we're getting coming in the door, the amount of information, the veracity of it. And I think the velocity, the volume alone is part of what we have to manage. And it's not managing all the data, it's managing the right data. Volume costs, right? And I think about that all the time, right? I'm thinking about the costs. So, because I got to pay the bills on the platform, right? And so I'm always thinking about what information do we really need, and at what periodicity do we really need to bring it in, and the way we bring it in, because that can help decrease some of the costs on our side in the way we manage the data, right? And so, in the variety, it's all over the place. It's coming from multiple different sources. Like we talked about, we've got to integrate all these different sources together, especially when we think about digital front door and what's being proposed there, because you've got a provider capability portal, you've got or I should say staff, and I'll leave it at staff because it's different, right, for different people. You've got the patient aspect of it. That's different information that's needed. And how do we present that information in the right way is what we're going to have to work through. And that's the opportunity space.
And I think that, Kenyon, over to you to kind of pull a thread on that. So you want to talk a little bit about the power of data analytics to help deliver improved care?
Patients can present with so many different possibilities of what may be, at the core of their issues, or maybe having early signals for things that might be indicative of a future issue. And there's only so much we as humans can pick up in limited interactions in a short clinical visit. So if you think about, we have a more holistic data, and all the data that's being aggregated and that's being mapped to this common data model, you have this greater visibility into the patient and potential issues, and you can really start thinking about the full wellness of our military members, and then being more proactive to make sure that any screenings or any potential gaps that might result in operational readiness can be identified and then ameliorated. And I think Crossland also thinking about the behavioral science aspects of a fully ready, healthy force. With that kind of data, we get sort of better insights into the overall sort of behaviors and what drives behaviors for different individuals, because not a single thing motivates all individuals. And so better understanding the social circumstances and the health and other social determinants allows us to provide sort of a sort of fuller care continuum. And I think that's one of the benefits that having this type of data and insights will generate.
Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Chris was talking about the technologies, and then Kenyon brought it around to, almost like point of care types of activities. And then Chris, it makes me think of Dr. Gabon's ideas around, a real time exchange of data from MHS GENESIS at the point of care, sending some bit of data to, the MIP platform to run through an algorithm to get a decision back, point of care decision support, at the platform, and laying that foundation again, having that the MIP understand vernacular of the MHS GENESIS as it's running through those algorithms, and maybe it needs to search back to Alta to get more history on that patient, that sort of thing. But having those, that's the sort of thing that's going to be supported. Those are the use cases that are going to be supported by what Kenyon was just talking about.
No, I agree. And I think that's the key here, right? Is automating as much of this as we can, right? Taking the human out of the loop, managing those processes. I want to be very clear, right? Everyone appropriately is concerned when we start talking AI, ML, and appropriateness and ethics, but it's managing it's a lot of this. A lot of this, Steve, that you're talking about is not even AI, ML level. Some of this is just automating the tools and processes that we have in place, right?
True.
And then layering that on top when you start talking really machine learning and AI capabilities, and then managing that the right way, right? And I think Health Affairs is doing a good job. They're moving forward. They're standing up. Health Affairs is standing up a data and AI governance council. And so those gates are being put in place the right way. Like I said, also with DHA hiring a chief data officer to really be that interface in that space. CDAO actually just came out with a memorandum recently really saying that every subordinate organization needs to have a chief data officer, CDAO type person. And that's the right way to do it, because those are the interfaces that we need. So they are working with the customers, but then also then help prioritizing what needs to be done, because we can't do it all. But there are use cases today that we can get after, I think, pretty easily and pretty quickly. Steve, some of the things that you were talking about with Jesus, some of the work that we're going back and forth on, those are things we can move forward with in many ways today and show. I think that's part of what we have to do. It's start to show that benefit, because by showing that benefit forces everyone to stop and really acknowledge what's being done, but also then to help drive the priorities around what's the next.
All right, so we are coming up on time. So I've got one more question, and then I'll let everybody put in last thoughts, and I'll wrap us up. So we've talked a lot about where we came from, where we are now, and understanding how, now that we've set this foundation, what's on the horizon in this area as we move forward? How can we leverage these tools in a forward-thinking way? And I think, Kenyon, I'll start with you and then go back around.
Yeah, indeed. I think we've covered a good bit of it. But I think, again, I mean, with such a strong foundation in place, I mean, the future is wide open. I think the key things just to remember have to do around building trust in the system. Because if we want people to use the data, to use it fully, and be able to experiment and come up with new ways to impact operational readiness and health, having a mindset for experimentation, but with experimentation, having the right guardrails around that. So you do build trust in the type of AI when that's being used, and you provide interpretability and transparency into how it's working, so you get outside this black box phenomenon, and then that makes people more willing to use it. And then you can have sort of more of a virtuous cycle of continuing to develop new discoveries, then implementing, then learning from what's working well or what's not working well, and being able to adapt quickly using this powerful infrastructure.
Any thoughts there, Chris?
No, as Kenyon said, I think we gave a lot of examples in our conversation. I think it is about building trust. It is about prioritizing work. Without priorities, we support a very large healthcare organization. It's not just in a couple states, right? It's around the world. And around the world has different mission sets. It's around the world. And oh, by the way, let's not forget our true readiness mission to support, and that's the warfighter downrange, right? And so it is different. But I think there's a lot that we can take from industry to really look at how we do things better. I have a laundry list of things I'd love to move forward with, but it's really about getting, first and foremost, everybody talks about AI. In the end, that's just a tool, right? That's just a tool in the end. I don't think in a few years we're going to be talking AI anymore, because it's just part of what we're all doing, right? It's just a part of like server provisioning and data management and all these other things that we do every day. So then it really becomes about, where do we drive it? How do we manage it the right way? And then, like I said, what are our priorities? And then to me right now, it's about getting our data right. That's the most important thing we need to be focused on. And there's the technical aspect of that from a data quality side, and there's the functional aspect of that data quality side. And working with our functionals to help get consistency in the data input side will only drive better data quality on the technical side.
All right, thanks, Chris. Steve?
Yeah, and you guys both started with the same first word, trust. And then when you said it out loud, Kenyon, that's where I was going to start too. And what Chris just said, getting the data right is what is going to build that trust. And that's what's going to drive a data-driven culture, a culture that trusts the data and will bring use cases when they see the need for an insight. We'll be able to support that with that foundation in place.
All right.
It's fun times.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll just do a quick round of last alibis, and then I'll wrap us up. And Steve, since I keep putting you at the end, we'll pick on you first.
Well, Chris, as you can hear, I'm excited see where we take all of this. We've got a lot to improve on, the data syndication side, but I look forward to seeing what types of use cases are brought forward and working with the EADS organization to bring them to fruition.
Yep.
All right, Kenyon.
Yeah, just to echo, it's incredibly exciting. I mean, the capabilities that have been put in place that are continuing to evolve have such potential to impact care in so many different ways. It especially excites me as we begin to make information more accessible and usable and frictionless for different audiences, which I think is going to be a big promoter of the Digital First initiative.
All right, Chris, over to you.
In 6 years, we've done a lot with the EDS and the MIP, and the MIP is not the only thing that we manage. It's the primary thing. But what I see happening is we're finally to a point where how we've gotten where we are is through basically a lot of rationalization. Like I said, 24 warehouses, replatforming 30 plus applications. What I see happening is we're really, with 24 ending, fiscal year 24, we're really pivoting away from that, right? We did the pharmacy data warehouse this year. We did MDR, which is this behemoth legacy purchase care capability last year. Pharmacy data warehouse, now all pharmacy data purchase care, direct care is in the MIP. But what I see now is we're moving away from that and then moving really towards fully leveraging our information. And I think that's the exciting part. I feel like a lot of the past was really building the right blocks, really the right foundation. And it's now moving away from that to really, how do we leverage our data? We talk about AI, ML, we talk about predictive modeling, we talk about all these different things. It's getting our data right, and then really the opportunity space going forward. So I'm excited about it.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank the panel very much for taking time to join us today. As you all know, data is very critical in my mind as the underlying infrastructure that truly allows for all these optimizations to happen. So I thank all of you for all the wonderful work you're doing, and I look forward to seeing what's more to come. For those of you that are dialed in, please look forward to additional topics. We'll be talking about the impact of cybersecurity and how to bring some of these more modern tools and solutions in a secure manner. We'll be talking a little bit more about what that digital front door is and potential use cases there. And then we'll also be having some conversations around DoD VA jointness and what that impact has on these initiatives. And then at the end, we'll be wrapping up at a GovTech Connects Digital Health Summit this fall. Thank you for dialing in.
This concludes today's episode of the Fed to Fed Podcast MHS Digital Front Door series in collaboration with the Leidos Partnership for Defense Health. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to visit the MHS Digital Front Door landing page at govtechconnects.com for the latest in MHS thought leadership. Thank you so much for joining us.